Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So it's time to give you an update on peppers and my chilies and show you the preparation that I take with my chilies and my peppers to get them planted outside. So I'll give you a little tour around the chilies that are in the house and the chilies that I've started to bring outside. So we're starting to bring plants into the greenhouse now, and as you can see it's starting to look alive quite a bit. I've gone ahead and I've planted a few tomatoes into the ground in the greenhouse. I mean, average temperatures are staying above 6 degrees in here, so I'm quite happy. We've had an odd couple of cold nights, but I'm generally quite happy. I've got quite a few tomatoes out here, and I've started planting my tomatoes in buckets. Okay, so we've got loads of tomatoes up here, and I brought quite a lot of my green chilies outside. So all of these plants back there, all of these plants down here, these are all my green chilies. And I've still got quite a lot inside, but these are the ones that I've separated recently and pull them straight outside. But we're starting to pot a few of the plants up. So here's one. Here's one that we've potted up and brought outside, and this is a habanero. And there's a couple of things that I want to show you on this actually. So inside the house, it's been really protected, really tender, really looked after. And since it's come outside, it's getting a little bit more of a harder time out here. So let me show you this, a couple of things here. So when you bring a plant outside, and especially with the sun that we're having at the moment, you might notice some white patches on the leaves like this. And over here as well, white patches on the leaves like this. Now that's nothing to worry about, that's a little bit of scorch from the sun. It just means it hasn't been hardened off properly. And I've done a specific video on hardening plants off in general, but I'll give you a little bit of a recap today on how to harden plants off. And it's quite essential with chilies as well to get them hardened off properly, so you don't have this sort of, you don't have this sun scorch, and the plants grow nice and healthy. You might also notice some leaves being nibbled, and when you see that, just have a check to see if there's any aphids on them. And if there is, then take action with them. I mean, there's no real aphids with this. I think something's had a nibble and disappeared, but that's not something that I'm too worried about. It will recover from that. It's not a big deal. But as well as this, there's a few other chilies that I'm starting to pot up as well. So there's a few other chilies that I'm starting to pot up as well. And this is a Hungarian hot wax, and this has started to actually flower. So it will grow to quite a decent size, and that's why I've got it in such a big bucket. Such a big bucket. A bucket, whatever you want to call it. It's one of these pots, right? I confused a pot and a bucket, and I got a bucket. Okay, so. Anyway, we've got this bucket, and it's about I think it's about an 8 litre. It's just a little bit smaller than my 10 litre pots, but it's an old flower pot from the supermarket, so you can get those. You can pick them up for free and recycle them. And this into flower. I'll show you a plant inside that's actually flowered, and I've got my first chili. But we'll get there. We haven't got inside. We're not going inside yet. There's a couple of other things. I've started planting my hyacinth beans out as well, but just be careful when you start doing that sort of thing that it's not going to suddenly drop in temperature. I've got the additional benefit of heat from my hotbed in here, so I'm not that worried. That's the other thing that I'm going to do in this hotbed is I'm going to probably, last year I went for 12 plants in here, and I realised that 12 plants is just way too much for this sort of size. So this year I'll probably go for about maybe 6 at a push, but I'm thinking maybe 4, maybe 6 at a push, depends on how I'm doing for space. Let's go outside and I'll show you some chilies out there as well. We've been hardening off chilies for a few days, and and the way I harden them off is if it's too hot, I won't bring them out in the scorching sun, because what will happen is, like the scorch I showed you on that habanero plant, you'll get that sort of effect happening. So what I'll generally do when it's a really sunny day, I'll bring them out either early in the morning when the sun's not as strong, or late in the evening when it's not as strong. Or I'll wait for a day when there's dapple shade, so when there's dappled sun, and I'll keep it somewhere where it's a little bit overcast, and I'll start off with a few hours first day and then increase that over the space of about 10 days, up to staying a full day outside. For us, it's not warm enough yet to have them outside in the outdoors, so a glass house or a cloche or some kind of cold frame is absolutely essential to keep them protected. So this is what I've done here as well. What I've done here is I've got 3 different types of chilies planted. It might look quite small, but what I'm going to do is I'm not going to let these get much bigger than they have to be, because I'm going to struggle with space this year, and if I want to keep all my chilli plants. This is a Hungarian hot wax, and as you can see I've buried it quite deep, and anytime you bury things quite deep, get rid of these bottom leaves, because that's a sure sign for disease. Whenever you have these low level leaves, they get splashed and they cause disease. Like this one, I've just planted these out as well. This is a green chilli, those bottom leaves are going off. Same with this is a chocolate habanero. And what I'll do with that is I'll take that bottom leaf off as well. Anything that's about to touch the soil, that needs to come off. I'm not too worried about these older leaves being taken off. There's plenty of vigour in the rest of the plant to come back to life. I'll give this a good watering in and get that settled. But let me show you something else as well. Some other plants that are potted up. Now here are some Aji lemons, so lemon chilies, and I've transferred them from a smaller pot into a larger pot today, but you can see the size that they put on. Tonight's the first night they're going to spend in the greenhouse. They need a bit of water. They've been potted on. They're a little bit droopy, so they need a bit of water. There's a couple of things I want to show you with this. Now inside the house, we've had a bit of an aphid infestation. That's what's calling this curling on the top of this plant. One of the things that will happen when your compost is, especially if your compost is quite nitrogen rich, your plants will put on a lot of fresh tender growth, and that's what the aphids will go for. And my compost is quite rich, and it's got a lot of chicken manure in it. It just opens up a weak spot for the aphids to come and attack. So it's one thing to be careful of when you're using a lot of manures. So with this one, I'm going to be a little bit brutal. Let me get a pair of scissors. I'm going to try and perform a little bit of surgery on it. First of all, I'm going to remove these aphid ordiform leaves, but I think they're too close to the centre. So instead of that, I'm just going to snip the whole top off. I'm just going to top it and let the chilli plant recover and send out side shoots, which it will do, and it should be okay. I mean, it's a similar sort of thing that I did with this one. This one's about to start flowering actually. It's the same plant. It's going to start flowering pretty soon. Once it's filled up from this, I'll move it to a bigger pot and I'll transfer it to its final pot. This one as well, we've got a little bit of aphid attacks on this. So any damaged leaves like that, I'm just going to pick off and get rid of them. And hopefully that'll get rid of some of the aphids. This is one of the best ways of controlling aphids actually. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to get some neem oil on it and give it a good spray with neem oil and get it properly doused in that, and hopefully that'll help get me back on top. That's basically what I use to control aphids. But with these plants, make sure you remove these bottom leaves as well, because these are the ones that will catch disease. So let's put these into the greenhouse and then we'll go inside and I'll show you some of the chilies that I've got in there. So because they're spending their first night out in the greenhouse, I'm making sure that these are getting some space on top of the hotbed, because the hotbed's still giving off some, I mean, I've topped it up recently with some grass clippings and chicken bedding, so it's giving off some good heat. So if you want to have a look at how I made the hotbed, I'll leave a link for it up here. Go and check it out. That's the other thing that I like to do when I'm here, is when I water the plants on top of the hotbed, so that any excess water from these plant pots ends up feeding my compost bin or my hotbed, and that in turn generates more heat. So is that going to be safe there? I think this is too. I think this is too big to put on top of the hotbed. Oops, exactly. So that's going on the ground. Let's find him some space somewhere. I'll put him where we put. I pulled these radishes from here a couple of days ago. Pop him just there. You can see the stuff that I've got in my greenhouse. It's just doing lovely at the moment. Let's go inside and let's go and have a look at the stuff I've got inside. So I'll give you a little tour around what we've got in the house at the moment. Let me move these back so you can get a better view. This is just loads and loads of different vegetables, but I'm focusing on chilies, so I'll keep an eye out. I'll keep you up on them. Here's another Aji lemon, and what I've done with this is I've potted it up yesterday from a small pot, and as you can see, the bottom stem, I've taken all the leaves off the bottom stem because I don't want them getting splashed and causing fungus. And what I'll do is I might keep this plant actually in here. It's a decent sized pot. It's probably I don't know how many litres this one is. It's a 2 litre pot. I might keep it in here. Let's see how big this plant gets. This is one of my Bangladeshi nagas that's been potted up recently, and these are ones that I'm really looking forward to this year. You can see how beautiful that is. So there's a few little things around the bottom with these leaves. Again, I'm just going to pinch them off and get rid of any leaves that are touching the soil, because these were potted up very recently. And what will happen is when you do this sort of thing, when you peel off these leaves, it'll very quickly put on a growth spurt. Okay, so don't worry about that. And these Bangladeshi nagas, I'm just going to wait a little bit longer before I pinch them out, because I want them to be a strong, sturdy plant before I encourage them to put outside growth. They're not as prolific as habaneros, so you just treat them a little bit more careful. And I like these a bit better than habaneros. So we've got some more habaneros that need potting up. You need to keep an eye on these sorts of things, because this has got a little bit of yellowing at the top. So the thing to do with this is it needs a feed, but rather than give it just a feed, I'm going to pot it up and move it into a bigger pot so it's got a bit more space and a bit more fresh compost, and that'll give it the boost that it needs. But also keep inspecting these quite often, because aphids can cause a lot of problems with these. A lot of green fly are coming in, even in the house. They're coming in and they're causing a bit of havoc. This is the other side of the house, other side of the room, and you can see more plants all over the place. This is the one that I'm quite excited about. This is a Hungarian hot wax, and as you can see, I've got a flower, and there you go. That's my first chilli. That's the first chilli of this season, and it's not an overwintered plant. It's a plant that I've sown this year, and there you go. I'm very happy with that, actually. I'm not just quite happy, but I'm very happy with that. Keep inspecting these plants, because I've just noticed a little aphid on them. So it's time to get the neem oil out again and give them a good old spray with neem oil again. Before you spray the neem oil, get these under the taps, give them a good wash, make sure you rinse off any aphids that you can, and then get the neem oil on them. I mean, I'm not getting any predators in the house. I'm not getting any winds in the house to blow the aphids off, and I'm not getting any predators, ladybirds, anything to come and eat the aphids. So that's one of the things that you do need to, whenever you're growing indoors, whether it's a greenhouse or in your house, you just do need to give it that manual intervention. Should we go upstairs and I'll show you some more chilies? Let's show you upstairs, come on. So we're in the attic, and this is the jungle in the attic. I've got loads of cucumbers back here. There's a soursop. Yeah, soursop, or atafol as we call it. Custard apple. There's some nashi pears over there, and they're all coming on quite nice. But there are a lot of aphids up here, so I think I need to give it a good old spray with everything. My tomatoes are starting to flower. I've got more. This Hungarian hot wax is ready to be potted up. So again, it's starting to flower. and I'm going to have some chilies coming pretty soon. So here's another one. I'm not sure the name of that one because I've mixed up the labels, but I've got a Dorset naga back here as well. So here's my Dorset naga, and again we're going to give this a bit of a spray with neem oil and pick out some of the pests. So any crumpled leaves like that, any browning leaves like that at the bottom, get rid of them. You don't need them. Anything that touches the soil, you don't need it. It's actually ready to be potted up. Do you know, if you ever see a leaf, a particular leaf covered in aphids, just pick them off. See, with this you can see, because I pinched it out at the top, it's sending out side branches. There's a side branch, there's a side branch. When you have these side branches and they're putting out their own leaves, they're crowding up the centre. So put off. Can you see what I'm doing? So that leaf is coming off that side branch. Take that leaf off. So you've got a nice open centre and you're getting some airflow in there. Because the last thing you want is, because of how many branches that come on, you don't want to cause it to get diseased. So any leaves that, I just want to try and get some air into the centre. So any leaves that are coming off the side branches that are pointing inwards, I'm taking them off. And you'll see this will react quite well to it. When you water these chilies, you don't need to water them too much. Just when you've got them in the house like this, just a little bit of water over the top is fine. You don't need to even bottom water these. A little bit of water over the top, just to moisten the soil. That's all you need. I've got to get some of these tomatoes out of the house, and that's what I've been working on at the moment. Here's another Dorset naga. Yeah, this one's looking a bit bigger, but these leaves at the bottom, take them off. So do watch my detailed video on hardening plants off. It'll give you advice on hardening all plants off in general. But if you want, like I mentioned with chilies, do start getting them outside and getting them into some sun starting now. And always watch for these aphids, because you can leave them for a day and you can come back and you'll find they're infested again. And that's what I'm doing. So I'm picking whatever I can see now. I'm picking them off, I'm squishing them, and then I'm going to get some neem oil sprayed on it. So I've done a specific video on using neem oil and the benefits of using neem oil, and I've just mixed some up, and I'm just going to give this a good old spray. So it's always important to get the underneath of the leaves, because that's where they're hiding. And generally these little bugs, they like to hide in the tips. So make sure you get a good soaking on the tips. You will need to repeat this every few days. And because neem oil is not a pesticide as such, it won't work on kill them on impact. I mean, there are some hydrophobic effects of neem oil, so there is something like that, but it won't kill them on impact like a pesticide would. It breaks the breeding cycles of any sap eating animals. So make sure you get the tips and give it a good soaking, and then move on to the next one. So get my Dorset naga out and give this a good spray, and then hold it to one side and get on the underneath. And it's always hard doing this inside because you're trying to reduce the amount of mess that you make at the same time. I know it's tempting to get your chilies out at the moment, but the nights are still very cold, so just be very careful. There might still be a frost. Do what I've done, take a few plants out as a tester, see how they cope, harden the rest of them off properly, and then transfer them over slowly, and hopefully we get some chilies planted in the ground outside this year and see how they work. So there's a little update on my chilies and a little bit of a tour around the rest of the plants. I'll leave it there for this one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.